In this video, we'll be discussing using dPlex. And dPlex is a demultiplexing tool, and it's part of the dTective suite of tools for motion systems for Avid Media Composer. And dPlex is not to be confused with dPlex Pro. dPlex Pro is a standalone application, while dPlex is an AVX plugin for Avid Media Composer. So let's talk about how this all works. First, let's look at some multiplexed footage. I have this clip here, which is multiplexed video, meaning there are cameras on each, not just frame of video, but also field of video. And we can verify that there's a camera on each field of video by looking at each field. And the way you do that is go up to Tools and select the Command palette. And this allows us to see multiple buttons that are available to us. And we're interested in this Step Forward One Field button right here. So we change this to Active Palette right here. All these buttons become active, and I can go forward one field at a time. And you can see I went forward one field. I'm now on field 2, and there's a whole entire separate camera on field 2. I go forward again. That's the next field. That's the next field. That's the next field. So this is field-based media, and there's a camera on each field. And if you want to, you can reassign your keyboard to have step forward one field at a time and step backward one field at a time readily available to you. The way you do that is to go to File, go into your Settings, make sure you're on the User tab, and it'll probably look like this for you at first, but scroll down, open up the keyboard that's checked, double click on it, and we can close this. And here's our keyboard, and these are all of our various shortcuts. So we can actually create new shortcuts by doing a button-to-button reassignment. So I could reassign step backward one field to, let's say, the number 1, and forward one field to number 2. So all I gotta do is drag and drop. I'll put this on 1, and I'll put forward on 2. And now I can verify that this is working. Close this, go to my keyboard, type 2, and I'm going forward one field at a time just by using my keyboard. That's a handy little trick there. Okay, so we've determined that this is field-based media. I can close the command palette. And because this is field-based media, we need to actually convert it to frame-based media. And that way we'll have a camera on each frame versus every field. And the way you do that is to create a motion effect. So if you go to Tools, and all you gotta do is open up Motion Effect Editor. And this is how we create a new motion effect. So luckily, the default is 50% speed, so we're not going to change that. The only setting you want to make sure is set correctly is render to field motion using, you want VTR style. That's the main thing here. Okay. And this works as a real-time effect, so I can just push create. And that creates the new clip. It's actually in our bin here, and it automatically loaded it into our source viewer. You can see here that this is the clip name that's in our source viewer here. So we are ready to go with working with this clip now. And the first thing you want to do to make this process a bit easier is mark an endpoint on the first camera you want to work with. The first frame of this video is the camera we want to work with, but I can go ahead and find it using the arrow keys anyway, just to show you what you want to see. We are actually interested in camera 15, which is here. So I'll mark an endpoint there. And now we're going to create a new sequence using this clip. So just drag the clip from the source viewer to the timeline. And that created a new sequence, which is up here in our bin. I'll highlight it and rename it to dPlex. And then I want to hit home on the keyboard so that my time position indicator will go to the beginning of the clip. So select the timeline and hit home on the keyboard. There we go. And we're ready to apply dPlex. So let's go ahead and do that. Go to Tools, go to the Effect palette, and you're looking for the dTective category, which is right here. And you want dPlex, so just drag and drop onto your clip. You can also, let me undo that, because you can also go into what's called segment mode, highlight the clip, and then double click on the clip in the Effect palette, and that applies it as well. If you do that, make sure you go back out of segment mode. All right, so we're done with the Effect palette, and let's open the Effect editor. And there are two ways to do that. One is to go into the Effect mode here, or go to Tools and select Effect Editor. And now we're in. What's in here? Well, the first thing is, you see it says starting field number. That is something you'd need to worry about if you hadn't marked an endpoint before and you hadn't determined where to start working with this clip. Luckily, we already did that, so we don't have to worry about this starting field number. The next option is auto detect or manual select. I'm going to talk about manual select in a little bit, but for now we're going to work with auto detect. And then we have a tolerance setting. So auto detect works by this little region of interest box, using this to determine what has not changed in the video. So look for an area in the video that stays consistent throughout. And one thing I know that stays consistent throughout all this clip is the number 15. So I'm going to highlight the number 15. I'll draw a box around it. And dPlex is actually a real-time effect. So if I push play, let's see what happens. So it's almost working, but not quite. So let's hit home on the keyboard to go back to the beginning. And I need to change the tolerance. Right now the tolerance is too high. So if I highlight this slider, I can either drag it to the left, or if I know the number of tolerance I want to use, I can use my number pad on my keyboard to type in a number. So I'll type in 15, and now the tolerance is set to 15, and if I push play, it looks much better. Looks like it's isolated camera 15 correctly, and we are good to go on that. All right, let's hit home on the keyboard again, go back to the beginning. And that's how auto detect works. You just select an area that doesn't change, you adjust your tolerance, and dPlex will find the cameras automatically. But there are some instances, rarely, where you might have a consistent number of cameras. And in this case, we actually do. If I close the effect editor, and let's go over here to this clip in the source viewer and go forward frame by frame, and you'll see that there are numbers up here indicating that it's going consistently camera by camera from 1 through 16, which means that there are 16 cameras and it's a consistent rotation. So that makes this job a little bit easier. Let's go back to the effect editor, and we're going to use manual select. Now you have starting field, which is actually correct. We're already on the beginning, or we're on camera 15, which is what we want. There are 2 fields per camera, and here's the magic number. How many cameras are there? Well, we know there's 16, so I can type in 16. Now if I push play, dPlex is basically finding every 16th camera. Now again, that only works if you have a consistent rotation of cameras, meaning they go from 1 through whatever number of cameras there are consistently. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and render this effect. And the way you render is this button right here. Push render effect, and I'll explain why in a second. I'm going to go ahead and render it. I'll render as a background process, and we'll let that finish up. Okay, it's done. And the reason I brought this up was there's a way to verify that dPlex found all the cameras it was looking for. And that's done by using a picture-in-picture. So here's how it works. We're going to create a new track of video. So if you right-click here, you can choose New Video Track. Okay. I'm going to target video 2. And what I'm going to do is place the exact same clip that we worked with, which is this clip right here, with the exact same endpoint. I'll place that at the very beginning of the timeline on V2. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is just to overwrite, or use the overwrite button to apply this to V2. So this button right here is overwrite. And I will place this clip from the endpoint exactly from this starting point on video track 2 on the timeline. So go ahead and push overwrite. And now we've basically duplicated this clip onto video track 2, only it's not been demultiplexed. So why did I do that? Well, I can apply what's called a picture-in-picture effect. So if you go to the effect palette, go to the blend category, and drop the picture-in-picture effect onto the clip on V2. And let's open the effect editor so we can reposition this. Put it down here. And what I want to do is just skip through this frame by frame. I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard. And just make sure that when it hits camera 15, that both of these change correctly, which it did. So every time it hits 15, I want to make sure that dPlex caught that. So it looks like it did. So it's just a verification method to make sure there are no cameras missed, no camera angles missed. But that's it. That's how you use dPlex in Avid Media Composer.